year in the United States, approximately 20,000 people go to the emergency room for carbon monoxide poisoning.
Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas. It's extremely poisonous, and it can kill you in minutes if you're exposed to it.
Yearly, 500 people die from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Fire and Rescue Captain Antonio Burton is a first responder and has been a victim of a CO leak in his home.
It's a strange feeling. Once you start that, feeling dizzy, then you get a tremendous headache. You also start experiencing nausea, and that nausea can lead to other symptoms.
In a really severe case of carbon monoxide poisoning, someone could lose consciousness or die within minutes.
Hurricanes or severe storms can trigger power outages that last for days. Some people fire up a generator for power or a gas stove to heat their home, but fail to realize the danger.
It's one thing to be cold, it's another thing to be seriously ill and need critical care.
Never use your oven to heat your home. It could be a source of carbon monoxide for you. It's dangerous. Don't do it.
Make sure that their appliances and heating devices are properly vented and maintained by a professional.
Dangers from poorly maintained heating systems are really going to be the number one cause of carbon monoxide poisonings in the United States.
Carbon monoxide makes people sick, it kills people, and it's completely preventable.
After a 5-year courtship, on January 9th, 2021, Catherine and Lou Hudgens married at Watercolor Resort in Destin, Florida. On January 11th, 2021, they boarded a plane in Pensacola, Florida, headed to Bozeman, Montana for their dream honeymoon. They were on their way to Rainbow Ranch Lodge, a known wedding destination in Big Sky, Montana. Little did they know there was a malfunctioning gas-powered boiler in the next room to theirs that was emitting large amounts of carbon monoxide into an unventilated space. When they woke up on Tuesday morning, January 12th, Catherine was dizzy and had fallen, and Lou had a mild headache. After incessant calls from family members to hotel management to do a wellness check on them, finally, the general manager of the hotel, Scott Nelson, found Lou dead in the room, and Catherine was incoherent, suffering from traumatic brain damage. When Nelson entered their room, he discovered that the bracket that should have contained a carbon monoxide alarm was empty. He again left the room to retrieve a new carbon monoxide alarm. It was then that he called 911 and reported the situation, claiming that drugs could be involved. He just didn't know. He returned to the room to install a new carbon monoxide alarm, told Catherine he had called for help, then left, closing the door behind him again. Scott Nelson silenced the alarm, removed it from the wall, and attempted to cover up his lies by removing the carbon monoxide alarm from the room, but was stopped by law enforcement. He then explained to the deputy that he had found it dismantled by Lou and Catherine in the room, and he placed the batteries and hung it back up on the wall. But this was all a big lie, as Nelson later confessed to what really happened, as he admits in this video deposition.
Where was the carbon monoxide detector when they checked in, Mr. Nelson?
Unfortunately, it wasn't in the room.
Okay. So how did a carbon monoxide detector that wasn't in the Hudgens room when they checked in on January the 11th show up in the room on January the 15th after you find Mr. Hudgens dead? And how does the carbon monoxide detector get in that room before the first responders get there? How did it get there?
I'm embarrassed in the fact that it wasn't there, and I did put it in there.
When did you put it in there, Mr. Nelson?
That morning when I realized that it wasn't there.
After you found Lou dead?
Unfortunately, yes.
All right, and you put it in there before the police got there?
I did.
And then you told the police that it had been in the room, didn't you?
Correct.
And you told the police it had been disabled by my dead client who was lying on the bed.
We have to take no more questions. We have to take a break here. Off the record.
But as any good lawyer and investigator knows, the devil is always in the details. One of the smoking guns in this case that submitted the truth, which unequivocally proved Scott Nelson was an absolute liar, was a serendipitous and innocuous video of the interior of their honeymoon suite filmed by Catherine upon revival. She was so excited by the beauty of the suite, she filmed it upon arrival. That video captured an empty bracket on the wall where a carbon monoxide monoxide detector had been installed. Today, our Justice in America Network TV producer and host, Steve Murphy, sits down with the amazing lawyers Skip Finkbohner and David Cain of Cunningham Bounds, who tried this case to a landmark jury verdict of $15 million, beating a record that stood for 20 years in this venue. Skip and David have earned reputations as unyielding trial lawyers who repeatedly represent individuals and families against big companies and the Goliaths of the world and repeatedly win. And their amazing skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide their clients with the results they need and the results they most deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Mobile, Alabama. It is my great pleasure to introduce Skip Finkbohner and David Cain to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Glad to be here. Appreciate you having us.
Skip, tell us a little bit about your law firm. What do you guys do?
Cunningham Bounds is a law firm we've been around since 1958, and we handle plaintiff personal injury, catastrophic injury cases, wrongful death cases, product liability cases, medical malpractice cases, commercial litigation where, say, a medium or small size company gets jerked around and cheated by a bigger company. And then mostly really significant injury cases.
You know, there's all kinds of law once you get your license, right? You could work for a corporate law firm, make tons of money, whatever, but you chose to represent the little guy. Why is that? What's in you and your background?
Fighting for somebody that doesn't have the power or the financial resources to get a fair shake on their own. You have to understand the people that we represent don't want to go hire a lawyer. The reason they end up coming to us is, and one of the first things they'll say is, I don't want to be here. Of course they don't, but they don't have an alternative, and we're their last best hope. And so that is, when that is a factor, and it always is with our clients, that that you're their only hope. And it makes what we do incredibly important and has a direct impact on their lives.
Although big verdicts, which translates into big money, sometimes, is kind of a just, let's say, end result for some of these cases. There's nothing that can replace the death of somebody, right?
Never,
okay.
Never. There's not a single person I've ever represented who lost a loved one, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a child. No matter how much money we've gotten them, they wouldn't take it all in a pile and shove it across the table if they could have that person back. They live with the consequences of that loss forever.
And David, we're here today to talk about a case like that, right? The Hudgens case?
We are.
Tell our audience a little bit about the facts of the case.
Sure. Well, this case involved a couple, Catherine and Lou Hudgens, that took place back in January of 2021. And they had traveled to a place called Rainbow Ranch out in Montana on their honeymoon. They arrived there on a Monday evening, were super excited about the fact that they were in this very neat place that Lou had always dreamed of going and wanted to take Catherine to. And so arrived happy and ready to spend the week together. Unbeknownst to them, in a utility room right next to their honeymoon suite was a spa boiler, a boiler that the ranch was utilizing for purposes of heating a pool and a spa in the facility kind of above and adjacent to their room. In the process of maintaining and attempting to repair that spa boiler, what we learned is there was a history associated with that boiler that would suggest that it was a problem boiler. It began to overheat quite frequently. There were numerous maintenance calls made. There was a gross lack of repair records and bills that were maintained by the ranch at the time. What the evidence in the case revealed was that despite that, everyone knew that we had a problem with this boiler. And what ultimately turned out to be the case was, as the boiler continued to suffer problems, continued to overheat as a result of not being properly regulated at the time that it was installed, or at some point in time after its installation became deregulated, in any event began to overheat to the point that it fractured the heat exchanger and created a path of carbon monoxide to escape the heater into the room that the heater was housed in, which happened to be adjacent to the Hudgens honeymoon suite. And as that carbon monoxide began to migrate out of that room through the walls and into the suite that Catherine and Lou were spending their honeymoon in, they began to suffer the ill effects of that carbon monoxide.
So when they woke up the next morning, when the next morning appeared, Catherine had, the husband, he had a headache, correct?
Yeah, and that's typical.
And his wife, Catherine, who we'll meet later on here, she was also suffering some ill effects of being exposed to this. The interesting thing about this case is that, you know, their family was constantly trying to get in touch with them, etc., and they stopped hearing from them. They made contact with the manager, who was, what was his name?
Scott Nelson, right?
They made contact to do a wellness check. And he was reluctant to do that, wasn't he?
Well, they promised the family they would do wellness checks. They called on Tuesday and Wednesday for wellness checks and were promised that that would happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, the reason I'm bringing it up, had they done this wellness check, okay, had they fixed the boiler, found out what the problem was, we wouldn't have this case, would we?
No.
Subsequent days went by, and unfortunately, the husband passed. Lou passed, didn't he?
He did. You know, they arrived that Monday evening, and so over the course of a 2 to 3 day period of time, they continued to suffer toxic carbon monoxide exposure. And as they continued to suffer that exposure, they began to decompensate physically and mentally, to the point that by the time that ultimately the problem was discovered, and the family had insisted that if the hotel, the Rainbow Ranch, didn't intervene and didn't go do a true wellness check on them, that they were going to call the sheriff. By the time that Friday morning rolled around, Lou was dead, and Catherine had suffered some pretty significant problems.
3 or 4 days, nothing happened.
3 to 4 days, nothing happened, despite a family that was insisting upon something happening.
You know, there's an old saying, the devil's in the details. What I loved about this case was, what was the very first thing Catherine did when she got to this dream vacation lodge?
When they arrived that Monday night, understand they had been married on Saturday, and here in Northwest Florida. And when they arrived that evening, it was dark, and Alabama, University of Alabama football team was playing Ohio State in the national championship game, and both Lou and Catherine are huge Alabama Crimson Tide football fans. So Lou was in a hurry to get into the room. They got into the room and put the game on, and Catherine was excited about being there, so Catherine videoed the room with her phone and then say, Lou, say hi, and the bathroom, the bedroom, the whole thing. It was you know, so she videoed the whole room.
And how was that instrumental? Let's say a closing piece of evidence that you were able to use to basically counter what the manager was saying about what happened in the room?
Well, at first we didn't know how important that piece of evidence was.
Because what did it show?
Well, let me tell you why it turned out to be important. The manager testified and told the authorities and the homicide investigators that when he went into the room after the family threatened to call the sheriff's department on Friday, that he found that the carbon monoxide detector that had been mounted on the wall had been dismounted from the wall and disabled. The batteries were out. And he said that Catherine, or more likely Lou, did that, and it would have and should have warned them and saved their lives. So they set up and said it was Lou and Catherine's fault. That's why there would be no recovery in the case. And what we found on the video was that when we zoomed in, there was a bracket for the carbon monoxide detector on the wall, but no carbon monoxide detector. It was empty. So the question then became, how did the carbon monoxide detector that was on the floor when the police got there, how did it get there?
It's kind of ludicrous, if I was a juror, it's kind of ludicrous to think that a couple would go into a nice place and dismantle anything. I mean, I remember that Nelson, the manager, mentioned that maybe they were involved with drugs. Here you have a middle-aged couple. They were, what, in their 50s? Supposedly doing drugs. You know, it's insane. Well, did you happen to interview any of the jurors afterwards?
I did not.
I would have loved to interview them to find out, did you find this plausible? Was this realistic?
I think that they knew after opening statements that it was a total lie. The manager planted the evidence, is what happened.
Yeah.
And then he ultimately, on cross-examination, after he said, oh no, it was on the wall when we put him in the room and it was working fine and he disabled it, and he said that 10 or 20 times, he was impeached with the video and still shots from the video, and then he admitted, well, it was not in there when we put him in the room, right, and I planted it after the fact. After I called the police and before they got there, I put it in the room and then told the police that Lou had disabled it.
Thank you for sending, by the way, that deposition of him admitting that. One of the things, since we've covered a lot of cases that I've seen over the years, it is really unfortunate people aren't prosecuted for lying under oath. Because if people were prosecuted with stern sentences, like let's say 50 years, they wouldn't be lying at all, would they?
No, they wouldn't, no, because the penalty for lying would far surpass the benefit that they would get for lying. And he was prosecuted, I think.
Criminally?
He was.
And what happened?
I don't know what the outcome was because it was kind of hush-hush.
In all these cases, David, that you have found that when someone's responsible, they do everything in the possible. Just shove it on to somebody else, don't they? Blame somebody else.
It seems to be that way, and that was kind of the theme throughout this entire case. You know, the Rainbow Ranch, even during the trial, kind of took the position that Scott Nelson was this rogue actor, you know, and that he had acted on his own, and that it was not their fault, that he had done the thing.
Although he was an employee.
He was 100% an employee, and the manager and the top dog in charge at the facility. And there were 7.5 years of records that would have revealed to anybody paying attention that this boiler was a problem. Never mind the fact that there's still the question of why the carbon monoxide detector was not on the wall when Lou and Catherine arrived at that honeymoon suite, suggesting that perhaps it had been alarming in times past, and as opposed to dealing with the problem, the ranch made the decision to just disable the detector.
I think that's probably the real reason why they did that, right? That wasn't there.
That would be the most logical explanation.
Save money and time, right?
Exactly.
You got a $15 million verdict, huge verdict, Montana. What made them decide to come in with $15 million? Because you led the closing statement, didn't you?
David did the first closing statement, and I did the second closing statement.
So what did you ask for?
We suggested, I think, 30 or 35 million. They came back with 15 million. You have to understand, though, that Bozeman is, and we were warned about this, that it's an extremely conservative venue.
So let's stop on that word conservative, because I've seen this all over the country. What does conservative mean to you? That a juror thinks that a life is not worth that much? Is that what they're looking at?
No, I think what they think is that jurors like that have an independent streak, and they're like, I'm in control of my own destiny, and if I do what I'm supposed to do, everything will be okay. It's hard for them to take to heart that they can do everything correctly and some complete irresponsible derelict knucklehead would do something like this. And so as they're sitting listening to the evidence, even though this happened to Lou and Catherine and it was no fault of their own, they're like, well, I mean, that really couldn't happen to me because I would have acted differently under different circumstances.
In other words, you're trying to blame the deceased.
Right, or some other person like Scott Nelson, or this is a one-off. It just doesn't happen that much, and this kind of thing does happen a lot.
David, do you think the phrase jackpot justice runs through conservative jurors' minds?
I don't think it does. I mean, I think at the end of the day, everybody brings their own life experiences, their own opinions to the jury room, and that those life experiences kind of dictate where the verdicts ultimately reside. And I think that there's no doubt in the minds of all of those jurors that happened to sit in Bozeman that they were doing exactly what they needed to do and providing justice for Catherine and justice for Lou. And I don't think that anybody walked out of that jury room that day with anything other than pride in their verdict.
Is that verdict still the outstanding verdict in the venue?
We were told that it was several times higher than the largest verdict before that. Wasn't surprising to me that we got a $15 million verdict. I was surprised that venue didn't have anything remotely close near that.
Well, congratulations on the verdict. Especially in a conservative venue like that. We have with us today your client, Catherine. So let's bring her on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Catherine Hudgens to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm really glad you're here today. I know this was a traumatic experience for you, probably still is. You guys were together for 5 years before you decided to get married, right?
Yes.
And then finally, he wanted to go up to Big Sky, Montana. The pictures look good, didn't they?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I'd never been.
You guys were excited. I think the smartest thing you ever did was videotape that room, right?
I guess so.
How important did that turn out to be in the case?
It was a crucial, I think, part of evidence.
Because you videotaped everywhere.
Right. I mean, I was just excited. I wanted to, remember the room and remember, my honeymoon. And it was a lodge, it was a ranch, and I thought that was neat, and I just videoed the whole room.
By the way, my condolences for the loss of your husband. What was that like?
I mean, it shattered my whole life. I had just gotten married on a Saturday night, and we had been together 5 years, and, I have children from a previous marriage, and he had a son from a previous marriage. And because of the pandemic, we didn't go out of the country, or, he just said, Montana's a beautiful area of the United States, let's go there.
What did you plan to do when you were there? Did they have like hiking or?
We were going to go hiking, we were going to ski one day, we were going to go drive up to Yellowstone, just do everything.
So the first day after you slept there one night, you were dizzy. Your husband had a headache, I think, right?
I just didn't feel very good. I thought maybe I was just tired from the trip or from the wedding, and I just didn't feel good. And I told him that, I just didn't really remember much. I just woke up and was disoriented.
And you were in constant contact with your relatives, right?
Right. I'm very close to my older sister, and she would always text and call.
And that texting stopped?
I guess so, yeah.
Is she the one that insisted that Scott Nelson go do a wellness check?
She called the day that she didn't hear from me, and she just said something told her, to keep calling.
It is outrageous that he would even suggest, Scott Nelson, the manager. He's not the manager there anymore, is he?
I don't think so.
It is outrageous that he would suggest that a middle-aged couple who know what they're doing in life, are established, they would be up there drinking and drugging or whatever the hell they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's just an excuse.
You were devastated after your husband's passing. What kind of condition were you in? Physical, mental condition?
I just was in a fog for a solid year. I just had anxiety. Carbon monoxide is a silent drug, so they say, and I don't know what it did to my brain, but my neurologist said that, it did damage to my brain, and that, I would slowly possibly recover, but it would always be there.
Now, 5 years later, correct?
Yes.
How are you today?
I mean, I'm better. I feel like I'm a different person. You know,
In what way?
I'm not very social anymore. I don't react very quickly. I'm slower, just things that I've noticed about my own personality.
Okay. What do you think about the job that Cunningham Bounds did for you?
I mean, their reputation is excellent anyway, but they stood by me and did a fine job. And if you could have seen them in court, it just was amazing.
What did you think about when you saw that video deposition of Scott Nelson admitting that he had lied about everything to everyone?
Well, that was the first time I even saw it was in court, and I was shocked.
Was he in the courtroom?
No, he was, just on the video.
Well, it's a shame things happen. What do you think about justice in America these days?
I have a pretty good, respect for that justice is served when it needs to be. I just think that firms like Cunningham Bounds will do their job, and if they're good at what they do, they'll get to the bottom, and like they did on this case.
You know what makes me angry, because I've done a lot of these shows, is the fact that you have to go to court, you eventually end up proving that they're lying, that they are responsible, and it takes sometimes years, when they could have admitted it way in the beginning, but they didn't want to pay the money.
Take the easy way out and just blame it on us.
Well, I'm so glad. What are you doing these days?
I have 3 girls, and I'm raising my 3 girls, and I live in Fairhope, and I just moved in a new house because I just didn't want to live any longer in the house that Lou and I had bought together.
Well, I'm so appreciative of the fact that you came today. Is there anything else you want to say to our national audience?
I just, would say be very, diligent about looking for carbon monoxide detectors in your room. Send them with your children if they go on trips, because it never occurred to me to even look around the room. I mean, I videoed the room for myself.
God, you did. Thank God you did.
People that don't forget, to turn your car off when you go into your garage. Just, I'm a lot more,
Careful.
Yeah, careful about what I do.
And you also recognize that people will lie through their teeth to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I saw that.
Did you ever have an opportunity to say anything to Scott Nelson?
No, I didn't. I wish I did.
I can share a couple of words you'd like to tell. All right, well, thank you so much. And again, sorry for your loss.
I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
One last question to both of you. Obviously, when cases come in through your door, you select some, and then you turn away some. What is the criteria that you use to select a case, like this case, the Hudgens case? And let me add one other thing, because you knew you'd have to try it in a very conservative jurisdiction. You knew that it would, it was the right thing to do, but not all law firms can afford the right thing to do.
Well, that's true. I would say that it's the magnitude of the case in terms of the wrongdoing and the magnitude of the damage and injury to the person or family, combined with, do these people really want our help? And if they do, that's what we're here for. We try to evaluate, if these people need help, can we potentially get them the help that they need? And if we can, then we're willing to take the case. And when we agree to take a case, that means we're funding everything, to get the case to trial.
What about you, David?
Well, just to kind of add on to what Skip has said, I had a mentor here at the firm and had the benefit of learning from some really great trial lawyers. And one of the things that he said to me that has always stuck with me as far as that goes is, we don't take cases, we take clients. And what he meant by that is, you're taking on a person, you're taking on a family, you're taking on what is the most important thing in that person's life at that time, and you have to treat them like they're clients, not like they're cases. And So when we have an opportunity to help somebody in that regard in a way where they've been catastrophically injured or somebody in their family has been killed, being able to say we've taken on them as a client versus a stagnant, stale case really provides kind of the motivation to do the things that are necessary monetarily and otherwise to ultimately, hopefully, get them the result that they deserve.
Well, again, congratulations, and you have improved my vocabulary. I'm no longer ever going to say, how do you select your cases? How do you select your clients, right? Okay, well, thank both of you for being on the show.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate you having us.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.